Hi, I'm Matthew Hoelscher, founder of Parent Marriage Coaching and creator of the Emotionally Connected Couples Coaching Program. Today I want to talk to you about dealing with thirds in a relationship. Now you may be seeing, what is a third? Well, thirds are people that always trying to penetrate your relationship with your partner and trying to interject themselves and making it sort of a three-way instead of just you and your partner. There are people that want to inject themselves into our relationships, and they're often a cause of stress and turmoil in a relationship that I have to help couples overcome. So the number one stressful third that I have to help people overcome in a relationship is the mother-in-law. See, I was lucky. My mom told me before I even got married, while I was dating, that I should also fall in love with my mother-in-law, because my wife and my mother-in-law come together as a package, and if I don't like both of them, I'm never going to be happy in my marriage because they come as a package and they're inseparable. And so I found that with my wife, I love my mother-in-law almost as much as my wife, and that's one of the secrets that I point to for having such a happy marriage. Because we're all on the same page and I have a good relationship with her and she respects me and my marriage and my wife, and we set those boundaries up. I still remember when I was first dating my wife, when we started, having sleepovers several times a week, around 10 o'clock when we're getting into bed and it's time for sexy time, my mother-in-law would call. She called every night to talk to her daughter at 10:30 at night. And I found that to be extremely interrupting, shall we say. So it was one of the first stresses I had to deal with. And so I talked to my wife about it and said, what are you talking about? Like, I talk to my mom once a month because I'm from South Dakota and we don't talk all the time. And it took me a long time to adjust to the more Miami Latin way of mother-in-laws and daughters talk 2 or 3 times a day, at morning, lunch, and in the evening or at night. Like, they are very close and they talk all the time. So it took me a while to wrap my head around this and understand it. And then I had to see, like, hey baby, is there something we can do here? Because your mom is really calling at just the most inopportune time. And because we were able to talk about it, she talked to her mom and said, hey mom, from now on I'm going to start calling you on my way home from work. I'm alone in the car. I can catch up with you and it won't affect my relationship with my new boyfriend, Matthew. So once you have mother-in-law, you have to understand that they're very tight. And if they didn't get in your business too much while you're dating, they usually just really come out and become the monster-in-law when the baby arrives. After the wedding, sometimes wedding stress and wedding planning, mother-in-laws try to take over your wedding. Once the baby arrives, oh man, they want baby time. They've been waiting for so long to be grandparents, and then they can really get into your relationship. And it can be a real challenge because you each have to handle your own mother-in-law. My general advice is that you need to handle your mother and your husband needs to handle his mother, and you need to decide what the rules and boundaries are for the mother-in-laws, and then each of you needs to talk to your respective mothers and keep them in check and keep them from interfering and becoming a third in your marriage. As a husband, I can tell you, your wife and her mother are going to be the default when it comes to raising the kids because they're on the same page. They understand each other, their traditions, their assumptions are all the same because your wife learned from her mother through the experience of growing up as her child. And so there's usually a conflict from the husband's mother because they also did it their way, but the husband's mother-in-law isn't in tune or isn't on the same page generally, unless you come from a very close-knit village or have very similar cultural or religious ties. Usually the husband's mother is more of an interference because she wants to raise the grandbaby her way. There's a lot of things that are natural for her that may not be natural for the wife and her mother. So dealing with that as a couple becomes a challenge because you have two people trying to exert control or influence over the baby, and you need to decide as a couple how you want to raise your child, what the boundaries are, and when each mother-in-law will get their own baby time. And I do encourage you to make sure that they both get their baby time and try to keep it as fair as possible. even though usually there are logistics that never makes it perfectly balanced. Just making sure you respect the wishes and you hear out both mother-in-laws and give them their chance to be grandmothers, because they've been waiting a long time for this. The second most common third that I deal with in a relationship is the ex-spouse. Because 50% of marriages end up in divorce, often people get married and have children at a young age, divorce, and then get remarried into a more mature relationship. But once you've had a child with somebody, you're going to be in that person's life for the rest of your life. You can divorce a person, you can live separately, you can date other people, but if you both love a child, you will be in each other's lives for the rest of your life, and divorce will never fix that. You will always be together at major events, kindergarten graduation, high school graduations, datings, weddings, at birthday parties, and holidays. So when you come together as a new couple, it's important to talk about your relationships with your exes and your spouses and set boundaries again around what is their role, what's their influence, and what's appropriate behavior. I mean, I've had couples come to me where one partner still goes on vacation, has dinners, and celebrates holidays with an ex, and leaves their partner completely out of it. And they get very jealous, and they don't understand this. And that leads to other problems. So you have to talk about what's the role with the baby, what's the role with the exes, what's the role with your children, and how you're going to integrate all that. And it can get really complicated. And that's a good warning sign of when you might need to hire a coach so that you can talk through these things and come together as a couple and figure out what's your agreement around exes. The third most common interference, or third in a relationship, is the stepkids. Again, because we have second and third marriages, often the first children are much older and they're coming into the new marriage at 15 as a teenager, 16, 18, and there could be a big age difference where you have teenagers and then you have new babies with your new partner, and there's this huge age gap where the stepchild doesn't fully recognize you as a partner or is almost done in their development to where they don't need a parent anymore, but they still need guidance and you can't just treat them as a friend. So dealing with stepkids is another important conversation to have with your partner and decide what are the boundaries, what are the expectations, and how are you going to mesh together as a family and keep everything equal and fair. Because stepkids have a way of pulling the heartstrings of their biological parent and using it against the non-biological step-parent. And if there isn't consistencies and expectations, discipline, and consequences, it creates a lot of turmoil in the family because it ends up that the partner treats their biological children different than their stepchildren. And there's a lot of different combinations and ways that can manifest. It can be complicated. And that's, again, an important time to come together. If you can't have that conversation between yourselves, to hire a professional to come in and help you mitigate that conversation so that you can have a happy, warm, loving family that's free and creates fertile ground for everyone to grow and be successful. Because it really doesn't matter if you're biological or not. Being a parent isn't about having the kids. It's about being a role model and a leader and a guide and a mentor for children so that they can grow and reach their full potential. And that doesn't matter if they're yours biologically or not. It's a matter of mindset and how you want your family to be and what kind of intentions you have for your family. Finally, the fourth most common third that I have to deal in a relationship is just friends. We have a lot of other relationships that may be non-sexual or non-intimate, our friends, but they want our time, attention, and sometimes our money, and all of that can be a threat to a primary marriage or a relationship. So when those thirds come in, it's important again to discuss what are the boundaries, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, what can be done and what can't be done, so that your marriage is secure and that there isn't a third person interfering with it or creating unneeded anxiety or trouble. So this is how my tips for helping you deal with thirds that are coming into your relationship and might be causing conflict with your marriage. If you need help dealing with all of them, feel free to call or email me from my website, parentmarriage.com, and I'd be happy to help you have a conversation by the phone or in person in my office in West Miami. My name's Matthew Hoelscher, founder of Parent Marriage Coaching and creator of the Emotionally Connected Couples Coaching Program. I look forward to talking to you soon.